we'll get rolling. We're a few minutes behind, so thank you everyone at home for being patient and letting all these beautiful people come into the studio. Before we get started, we of course acknowledge that we're on Kaurna land, which is poignant when I have this friend of mine sitting next to me, but especially this week, as it's NAIDOC week, a week that we celebrate the oldest unbroken practice culture in all of the world, our First Nations culture here in so-called Australia. And so we take this week to celebrate and look at that, which is an excellent way to kick off intelligent living. The theme of NAIDOC week this year is Heal Country, which is incredibly poignant and is having starting some wonderful conversations in a mainstream sort of sense, as well as these sorts of conversations in a really real sense amongst our communities, which is cool. So you can definitely tune into some of those conversations. But this is especially good for us because this Intelligent Living series is going to be, well, it starts right now. You're here, you're at the beginning of it, and it's around connecting to nature, connecting to the living world, and understanding our place as not separate from and in connection to a broad web of living beings. And so that is a perfect way to start our conversation with that sort of those themes in our minds. And it is my immense privilege to welcome over 150 people into this conversation with my friend and an incredible educator, Jack Buckskin. Everybody.
Thanks for making me blush to start off with.
Okay.
Firstly, for those that I haven't had a chance to meet before and you don't know who I am, my mum gave me the name Jack. Well, she didn't really give me the name Jack. My whole family called me Jack. My real name is Vincent. It was a difficult one for me to get my head around. I didn't actually find out my name was Vincent until I was around about 7 years old. My reception teacher actually, yes, I was 6 years old. My reception teacher told me that my name was Vincent. It wasn't a name that connected to me, I guess, and if you associate with a lot of Aboriginal people, we all know each other by nicknames. There's a whole bunch of family members, and I wouldn't know their first name. I've had people come up to me and go, you know so-and-so? I go, no idea. I'll go home and ask mum, and they go, yeah, that's your Uncle Budgie. And I go, oh, okay, yep. I told that person I didn't know who they were talking about. So, but my Aboriginal name is Ganya Pundon Duetpina Kudnuicha. And that's a bit of a tongue twister, but it breaks up into three smaller parts. It tells you my responsibility as a person. It tells you where I fit in my family, and it also tells you how I'm connected and what my duty is from here as well. So the first part of my name, Ganya, it means the rock. And that's my totem. It's my responsibility to care for the life and the habitat of the rock. And we'll talk a little bit about totems a little bit later. Second part of my name is Pundon Duetpina. And Pundon Duetpina means the father of the dragonfly, and my youngest born is known as the dragonfly. So I become Itpina, just it's the father of. And my name changed 3 times, so I'm still trying to get my head around that. And we keep the youngest name for the rest of our life. So the youngest in our family we call Kula Kulana. Means the youngest and the favourite. So those with parents that are parents, we know technically your youngest is your favourite, but just don't tell your other kids. And Kudnuicha tells you I'm the third born male in my family. So I've got 2 elder sisters. I grew up with a single mum. And before I go any further, I do want to pay respects to my mother and my sisters. And also the other Kaurna people and my family that have given me the opportunity to stand here and represent and tell their voice through mine, but also pay respects to the country and the spiritual ancestors of this country. So I do welcome you as all here and let our ancestors know that we all come as friends of country as well. For me to be able to speak in my mother tongue language, I'm honoured that I have that opportunity. My mother missed out. My grandfather was physically beaten. So to be able to stand here and have 150 odd people come and listen to me, be able to speak in language and talk about culture, it's a very special thing. And I love where we're at in society and being a part of the journey to make change. I guess for all of us, it's whether it's making systematic changes or, making individual changes. I guess seeing people's journey is what I'm most passionate about as well. I've been a language teacher for about 15 years now. It's gone by pretty quick. A cultural performer and a cultural educator at the same time. For me, I also acknowledge my father, who's Italian and Scottish. I grew up with just my mum's side, and I connected to my dad. I knew my dad growing up, and my dad was one of these guys who grew up in Australia and sort of got lost. He forgot who he was, or he didn't get the opportunity to ask who he was. So I've gone and I live my life between both worlds, the Aboriginal world and non-Aboriginal world. And then at the same time, I live between my mother and my father. My mum, who's very connected to place and country and our Aboriginal heritage. And my father, who came from another land, who calls this place home, but doesn't sort of have those same values. And for me to be able to see those changes in individuals and within my parents, I guess it helps me understand when I'm educating people within this society, the differences between the two worlds. It's hard to actually teach when you're on the inside. People always, if you speak another language and somebody go, can you say something in your language? And if you can just say something, there's too many things that you can think of. So it gets really difficult. So when people ask me that question, I always say ngapidalu, and ngapidalu just means something. Because it just gets too hard. Like they want you to rattle something off and it just gets too difficult. So it's always hard being on the inside. But when I focus and I talk about my dad and my childhood and where I came into this to be able to do this, my dad didn't even know who he was. He goes, I'm Australian. And he actually goes, son, I'm indigenous. And for me, I was like, oh, Dad, you're not indigenous. I have to break it to you, you're not indigenous. I go, you're honorary, like you grew up with our whole family and you're pretty much like a blackfella, but you're not. And he goes, no, but technicalities, look at the dictionary, son. It says, if you're born in the country and you inhabit this place, you're indigenous. Okay, all right, you got me on technicalities, but you're not Aboriginal, okay? So there's a little bit of a difference between Indigenous and Aboriginal. We don't really like those terminologies. And I guess there's a new one as well, people floating around with this First Nations as well. And I don't know another Aboriginal person that goes, are you First Nations? I'm First Nation. Nice to meet you, First Nations. We don't even say that to Aboriginal. Are you Aboriginal? I'm Aboriginal. Nice to meet you, Aboriginal. So, but they're like really foreign concepts and terms to us as well. But they were like the powers that be said, you got to pick out of these names. So if we have to pick one or the other, I'm probably one that lead towards Aboriginal more and we only say that to non-Aboriginal people. If I meet another Aboriginal person, we tell you who our mob is. I represent 3 different mobs: Garno, the Adelaide Plains here, Narunga from the York Peninsula, and Werrangul from Streaky Bay, Sojourn area. And I don't usually like to mention, but Wajibalik from over in Victoria. Nobody really likes Victorians. We don't even like them. So if you're Victorian, I think you have to leave now. No, I grew up in the 90s and we lost the last ever state of origin, footy. So I'm always going to hold that to a Victorian. But for me, when my dad is, he goes, son, I'm Indigenous. I go, you're not, Dad. I said, what's your cultural background, Dad? He goes, I don't know. He goes, my mum and dad used to speak French to each other. I said, French? And I was like, well, where's your mum and dad come from? He goes, I don't know. He's like, his mum's name's Mimi and Anderson, and my dad's name's John Bellelli. I said, John Bellelli sounds very Italian to me. If you just use the accent, Bellelli, it sounds very Italian. I was like, and he goes, and they spoke French to each other. He goes, yeah. So I was like, all right, I'll go on ancestry.com and go and have a look. Well, who's this? I'll try and find this John Bellelli. Couldn't find no John Bellelli. And I said, what do you know about your dad? He goes, he came from Cairo. So I had a look on, where's this John Bellelli come from Cairo? And there was 2 John Bellellis, but both of them middle names was John. Neither of them was John. One was Alfonso and one was Felix. I said, Dad, was your dad known as anything else? He goes, somebody called him Alfie once. Sorry to break it to you, your dad's name was Alfonso and not John. and she came from Italy, and his mother came from Scotland, and they actually used to speak French to each other. So my dad got caught up in the society and became this like Australian with no culture, no language, no religion, and nothing else to believe in. And he met my mother because they were both the minority, in the early stages in the 70s and the 80s. And if you ask people from a different background, it was like the Skips versus the world. And everybody, all the minorities were in one section, and the Australians sort of run the country and run the schools and everything else. And my mum and dad were both minorities and became together. So, my dad grew up and they had my older sister. And a year later had my next sister. 6 years later, they finally got their boy. So they just kept trying until they got their boy. So I keep telling my sisters that anyway. I'm the favourite. Technicalities, youngest and the favourite. Kula kulana. Now, but for me, when I talk about my responsibility, I didn't really, like a lot of people as a kid, you just go through your childhood and think, yeah, I'm good here. I got my own aspirations and dreams. And people said, what do you want to do when you grow up, Jack? I said, well, I'm going to play AFL footy. And they go, give us a plan B. Yeah, give me a little bit louder. I'm not talking loud enough. All right. That's how you just speak up, Jack. Yeah. No, not at all. Not for a while anyway. I used to be a very shy kid and I didn't like talking to people. I'm naturally an introvert. I don't like to talk to people. And if you see me in the streets, don't talk to me, okay? You might go, speak up, Jack. I had my time. But for me, I lost where I was going now. Thanks, man. Thanks, sound guys. When they asked me, what do you want to do? Every AFL player needs a plan B. I said, my plan B is play AFL footy. They go, okay, give us something a little bit different. A plan C. I said, play SANFL footy. I had no aspirations but to play footy. And a lot of Aboriginal people are like that. They're into sport. And because when religion and culture is taken away from you, you have to find something to connect to. And a lot of us connect to sport. It's something that a lot of people are naturally good at. We spend a lot of time on doing it because you're one included and you get to thrive in it as well. Culture wasn't this way during the 80s and 90s. A lot of people don't realize Aboriginal people only been part of mainstream society since 1970. There's 50 years in this thrown to the wolves, really, in the society that we live in. By the wolves, I don't mean you guys. I mean the society that's been created here. And, we all try to find and navigate our own lives through this. But for Aboriginal people, there's foreign concepts of things that we just take for granted. I didn't find out until 2006 that you could actually get a car loan. There was a thing called car loans. And it was a guy I was working with who said, you can, he rocked up with a car and I was like, yeah, that's a nice car. Where'd you get that from? He goes, I got it on hire purchase. I said, what's that mean? He goes, you go to the bank, you ask for a loan and they pay for it and then you just pay it off. I was like, lay-by. And he goes, yeah, pretty much. I go, you can lay-by a car. And he's like, yeah, pretty much. It sounds silly, but in 2006, this is the first time. I was the first person in my family to realize that you can get a car loan. So 2 weeks later, I rocked up to my cousin's sister's house in a brand new Mondeo and it was off its tits. It was so good. I love this little thing. Sorry, I did use the tits word and there's kids up there. Should have told me this is PG rated. But it was off its head and I was like, yeah, cool. And everyone's like, Jack, where'd you get the car? I was like, you can lay by cars. And I'm telling my whole family. Now we all got nice cars, but we were literally found out about this in 2006. It sounds silly, but we're still seeing what we're entitled to and what people take for granted. And as I got older, I had my sisters always on my back. I always had my mum. And I always found it really difficult. So I grew up with 9 sisters, so 2 biological sisters and 7 other sisters and two brothers. And one of my brothers was 25 years older than me, and the other was around about 30 years older than me. So all the ones my age were all girls. And my whole family used to call me Jack the Crack because I pretty much had one as well. Family banter, They used to call me the salt and the pepper family as well. But because my biological sisters and I and my cousin are the only ones with non-Aboriginal parents in our family. So we were like the fair-skinned ones as well. Got an internal politics and family banter. It's all good. Didn't help when I was like 10 years old. My name's Vincent. I got self-identity. Like my whole family's black and I'm the white guy. My name's Vincent, even worse. And everybody thought I was Italian. I was like, yeah, no, not Italian, but sì, mi chiamo Vincenzo. Yeah. Vincenzo Bellelli. Just jump ship sometimes. No, but I always had, when I'd go out and because I was naturally a shy person, I always found it difficult to like go and speak to girls and stuff. I'll go blue like discos and I'd go like, hey sis, who's your friend, you know? And it'd usually be other Aboriginal girls and go, what's your name? And she'd be like, Stephanie. And I'll be like, Stephanie what? You know, because we know genealogy from birth pretty much. She tells me last time, I'm pretty sure we're related. So I'll go home and, Mum, how are we related to Stephanie so-and-so? She'd go, your grandfather, her grandfather, brother and sister, don't think about it. And I was like, oh, okay. Now for me, any Aboriginal person, I ask Mum's permission, like ask Mum how we're related, she just don't even think about it. So it was really difficult for me because one, you gotta know genealogy. And I can go back to the very first Buckskin on record and know all of his brothers and sisters and all their kids. And that's 4 generations back. On my father's side, didn't even know my grandparents. We need to know how we're connected to people because we've got to make sure if we're marrying you just don't go, oh, you're good looking, how about it? You got to go, who's your grandparents, who's your parents? And we're going to work this out first. It got very easy once I got to high school and I met a Vietnamese girl. I'm going, pretty sure we're not related. Don't have to ask mum permission. 15 years later, we had 3 kids. So, but at that, the reason why I say that is because I didn't have that opportunity to know everything, and not everybody does. So you need those people to rely on to lead you in the right direction. One was my mother when it came to genealogy, but when it came to like connecting the country and connecting to our community, I identified more strongly as a Narungga kid. And we have a different kind of accent, as that you can pick Aboriginal people by their accent. And we drag our words out a lot more from the Yorke Peninsula, and we throw R's in everything, even when there's not one. That's a pillow, we call it a pillow. Yeah, there's an extra R in there. But for me, I didn't get the opportunity to go back to country because all I worried about, I'm playing footy. And my sister used to go back all the time, was connected in community and family, and I lived in my sister's shadow. My sister was like, this is my little brother. And I go around, yeah, this is my little brother. And I go, cool, yeah, that's my sister. And I didn't have to worry about it because I had her to rely on. And in 2006, unfortunately, my sister committed suicide. And that broke me. The first time I'd gone from like being on top of the world to not knowing who I was, where I was, and what I was doing. I hit rock bottom. I was playing SANFL footy, so my plan C was there, or I was almost at plan B and A, because they were both the same thing. But I gave up. I said, I'm not playing anymore. I lost interest and felt like my spirit had gone. I had a flu for about 4 months. It felt like a flu. My spirit was gone. And my uncle came up to me, who's now passed away, but he said, Jack, you got to come and learn some dance with us, you know, like it might help build your identity, build your spirit back up. And people talk about spirit all the time. We leave that and we go like, I'm disconnected from it. I don't need to know spirit. I don't need to respect and acknowledge it because it's not me. I'm like, yeah. You know, when you meet somebody who goes, let's catch up for coffee. You go, yeah, tomorrow, how about it? And you got no intention of catching up. You know, you just go the other way. It was like that. Yeah, I'll come and dance. No worries. I'll be there. And he rang me up 2 days later. He goes, Jack, how long did it take for you to get to the city? I said, around about half an hour. And he goes, all right, I'll see you in 35 minutes, and hung up the phone. And I go, oh, no. Elder tells you to do something, you're going to do it. So I just said it's going to take me 30 minutes. So I got there, film crew everywhere. And he goes, I was like, all right, so what are we doing? He goes, we're going to dance for a Bollywood film. I'm like, all right. And he goes, don't worry about it though. You know, I was like, I don't even know how to dance. I didn't get a chance to do any of this as a kid. I remember watching you when I was younger, but I don't know how to do this stuff. He's like, he goes, you'll see about a second in the film. You're all right. Don't worry about it. You know, just do this and a couple of little of these. You'll be all right. I was like, all right, I'll give it a go. It's only a second in the film. Barely see me. All right. So cool. And we start doing, I was like, if I'm going to see me, I'm going to get as close as I can to the main actor, you know? So I was like ducking right behind her, doing a couple of these. And then the director goes, we're going to get you a little freestyle to the camera. And I go, I got nothing. I go, I'll let all yous go. And they were like all seasoned pros. They've been dancing for years since they were kids. And I was like, yeah, yous go. And he'll call cut by the time it gets to me. So I stood back in the corner. And he goes, no, now it's your turn. I'm going, oh, God. And I grew up with, you know, sisters 6 and 7 years older than me in the 90s. And I had an undercut. And I used to wear baggy jeans. Yeah, they dressed me like Peter Andre. So, yeah. They were like, if you look like Peter Andre, all the girls will love you, brother, you know, yeah. I was like, no. But at this point in time, when I was put under the pressure, my inner Peter Andre came out. And I was just like, I just started, I don't know what I did. It was weird. And, and my whole family just cracked up laughing, started rolling on the ground. And I was just like, we had a big laugh about it. So, and about 2 years later, that film came out. And the only part that made it was my Peter Andre movie. Go and check it out. Love Story 2050, part 3. At about 8 minutes and 37 seconds. Maybe don't quote me on the seconds. But yeah, it was something that really connected me to the first thing that happened for me at that point in time is when I went downstairs and got painted up. We put ochre on, put the naga on. And I literally I walked in like Clark Kent. When I got painted up, I was Superman. I was looking in the mirror going, look how buff this guy is, skinny little lad. You know, like you got that little chihuahua with like big dog syndrome. That's me, the skinny dude's just like, look how buff he is. Yeah, look at this guy. But I felt like $1 million. I was like, this is cool. And then I went and did a bit of dancing. And I thought, yeah, I got lost in it. And I was like, I want to do this more. So I went and connected and I started dancing a lot more with him. And I just shadowed this guy. He's one of the most humble and amazing people you would have ever met. And a lot of people had the opportunity to learn from this guy. For me, he said, Jack, come and learn some language as well. The language is embedded in this country. And the rule for Aboriginal people is to speak the language of the country you're on. Now, I grew up a young Narungga kid. So his hook for that was like Kaurna is part of the same language family as Narungga. So you can come and learn Kaurna and then you can go and jump ship and do Narungga language. I'm like, yeah, no worries. Let's do that. And I went to class for the very first time and I heard this non-Aboriginal guy just rattle off language. And I don't even remember what it said. He's just like, it's like white noise. You know, when you hear another language, you just sound like white noise. And he's like, gumbul. And I heard this one word I recognized. Gumbul means to urinate. And you can imagine how many times we use this as kids to tease each other. And my eyes lit up and he goes, you heard gumbul, didn't you? I go, yeah. I said, I want to learn how to say that whole sentence. So he kept teaching for another 2 hours. I just wanted to know this one sentence. And I practiced it for the next 2 hours, drove home, another hour, get home, I go, Mum, I can't even remember what the sentence now, all right? But it was like, gumbul. And she's like, yeah, not bad. I was like, fluent. One sentence, I'm good. You know, so for me, I was like, yeah, here's a cool opportunity to start learning a bit more everyday language. Because Aboriginal people, we speak Aboriginal English, which is its own language in itself, which is a mixture of Aboriginal words thrown into an English sentence structure. And I remember our linguist sitting there going, Jack, tell me a sentence in Aboriginal language that has multiple languages in it. I was like, I don't know. I just find myself like transitioning from this family, I use this word, but this family, I use this word. And there's like 5 different words for the same thing, but we just adapt. We don't even realize we're doing it. And as this lady, we're in Melbourne, this lady walks past and she had these like ugly boots on. So I was like, hey, knacking the jibbity boogerties on the weeners dinner. And that just means look at those ugly shoes on the lady's foot. And because I didn't want to say it out loud because she would look at me and go, yeah, don't talk about my shoes. And so I was just saying it to him in language because it's like, that's the best thing about language. You can talk about people and they have no idea you're talking about them. So, and he goes, that's the one. And so for me, like that was a really cool thing that I knew Aboriginal English growing up as a kid. And I didn't like public speaking because I have a very strong accent. My accent used to be stronger than this. This is me like trying to put on a more English voice for you to understand. But once I started learning language, I started to connect to dance more. I started to connect to place more. The stories that he is telling me about dance, because our elders, when they talk to you, they talk in riddles for you and let you work out information for yourself. Because if I tell you an answer, you're going to forget about it. But if I tell you A and C and you work out B, you own this information. So our elders and our teaching style is all about creating those higher order thinking skills and letting you work it out for yourself. So I'm never going to tell you straight answers. I remember asking things that like mathematics, and I'd ask my mum's partner, he was a Noongar fella from Western Australia, and he'd go, I'd say, oh, what's, something about algebra. And he'd go on this tangent. I go, that did not help me at all. Not even close. And about 3 years later, the question I asked him and the answer he provided me came to me like 3 years later. I'm going, that's what you meant from it. And it actually did marry up, but he wasn't telling me straight answers because I didn't work it out for myself. So we spend a lot of time doing a couple of things. When sitting down with the old people, they always do this one. You got 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak. But you notice that everything that we have, and when we talk about our learning styles, we have 2 of. We have 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, 2 hands, 2 legs, 2 feet, only 1 mouth. We don't learn by talking. We learn by absorbing all this information, whether we're using our hands and actually doing something. This is me, like when I go to IKEA, I don't like to read instructions because I feel better about it when I just work it out. I've got 9 screws left over. I don't know where they were supposed to go. Every hole is covered and it's standing. It's good. I feel so much better about it. When you're walking country, when you're walking place, you're experiencing different things by seeing and observing, sitting and observing things. You see this world in a different space as well, not just taking it from face value. Our people always talk about see a 360. Always when you see a light side, there's always a dark side with everything. So you always do a 360 view because it changes your perspective on a lot of things. So sitting down and having that opportunity just to absorb information. And it was happening from a young age, and I didn't even realize it was happening because it was so embedded into the norm. And I thought everybody had that opportunity. I thought all my non-Aboriginal mates who were growing up the same and their parents did the same thing, and they were not. My dad didn't have that opportunity. He was disconnected, but I thought he had the same values as I did. And every kid is like that. We don't learn this until we're much later on in life. And so I started learning language. And then I started doing a whole bunch of what really got me is the very first project I started doing was Gunner place names. And the Gunner place names is looking at the original place names you see on an everyday basis, Noarlunga, Cowandilla, Yankulilla, and all these original names that we just take as suburbs, and they all have original names. And they all have specific meanings as well. And if you look into it and start doing the research to it, I'd struggled to read and write as a kid. And I started really reading into these place names in order to get it into a database. And it started giving me, you could see that the word now relates to the place as well. And you're going, okay, language is connecting me to this space and this place and tells me something that is not just a suburb. There's a deeper meaning when it comes to this as well. Now I need to stop, look, and understand what this name is. And then the name tells me the country. And then you start learning all these little things when you're sitting down with those old people. And they start talking about, you go, okay, I learn by looking and I understand this. And I learn by feeling and doing things. And I learn by walking and I learn by listening. But you go, I still got 2 nostrils. Where's the learning happening with 2 nostrils? You go, okay, the first way to access the spirit world is through scent. You look at every culture around the world has a spiritual element to it. And every culture around the world has a essence that relates to it, whether it's incense, it's smoke, it's waters, there's an essence to it that is scent related. So to access the spiritual world is first through scent. And you'll know that, and people have opportunities and people realize this, that, and they can't explain. And the best thing about being able to have aunties and uncles that are so connected to culture is that they can help explain. That's our duty with our mouth, is to seek clarification. That's it. The information then comes. And you know when you got a grandmother with a certain perfume, or an old grandfather and he used to smoke cigars and he had this certain smell, or you borrow a friend's jumper and you smell what they really smell like, and then you go to the house and the whole family have the same smell. It's because we inherit our scent from our parents, who inherit it from their parents and inherit it from their parents. So the essence of the smell of us is our ancient ancestors' smell. And the spirit world, they go back to the spirit world, but they recognize us from our smell. So when we talk about scent, it's the first way they would access the spiritual world. And then the second part of accessing the spiritual world is when you start to get a feeling. You know, when you see your hairs start to stand up on the back of your neck, and you're you're like at Waterfall Gully and you're like, oh my God, look how beautiful this is. And you go to a certain spot and you're like, yeah, maybe I should go back here. You just get this vibe and it starts to affect your mind. They're going, it doesn't seem right. And your mind, your body, the spirit tells your body tells your mind, probably not a place to go. So it's about taking on those messages, because the spirit world affect us. They actually guide us as people. We're specks in space and time. We're coming and we're going. All of us will probably be here 90, 100 years at the most. Unless you're Aboriginal, then life expectancy, 10 years less. So I'm like 50. Yeah, I'm really 30, but I'm like Aboriginal years, I'm 50. No, okay. That's all the grey hairs. This isn't the light doing this. But for when we talk about that spiritual connection, the space and place, and I remember sitting down with one of my uncles. I go, where's the heavens? Because I want to know what other cultures believe in as well. And I go, let's start with Christianity. I said, where's the heavens? And all he goes to me, he goes, Jack, where's the sky and the earth meet? That's his response. I'm going, that's easy. I've got that. Straight away, I've gone horizon and silence. Silence means you're wrong. So I'm going, okay, it's not the horizon. But you know, if you went and done your license when I did in the early 2000s and you failed your giveaways and you could go back straight away and do it again, and you can't do that anymore, you got to like wait the next day and then you can go back. So if you get it wrong, if you go and ask a question to the old people and you get it wrong because you just don't think about it, you just provide your answer and you're wrong, you're not allowed to go back and ask again. They'll wait and they'll just keep you silent, pretend they didn't even hear you. And so I'll go back the next time. He goes, Jack, you think about it? Where's the sky and the earth meet? So he still remembers, but I was wrong then. I was like, I still reckon the horizon. I didn't think about it. I totally forgot about it. Nah, I got nothing. Horizon. He goes, nah. So a couple months go past again. He goes, I'll give you a clue. Where's the sky and the earth meet? What stands in between? I'm going horizon. On a sunset, the sun is there. Now I'm sitting there thinking, I go, okay, the sun, there's either the sun itself, or we know that the sun is a female. All right, I'm going to go with the sun. I got 50-50, thanks, Daddy. You know, like 50-50 options. Next one's phone a friend. So I go on the sun, silence. All right, next time he asks me, I'm good. I've got females. It's going to be females. Yeah, Jack, where's the sun and the earth meet? Sky and the earth meet. I go, females. He goes, silence again. Oh, no, this is frustrating, you know, because you never get straight answers, all right? You got to work this out for yourself. I'm going to tell you fellas the answers. This took me about a year to work this out. Where's the sky and the earth meet? What stands in between? Who thought the same thing as me, horizon, and like over there? The sky and the earth meets right here. And we stand in between. The world as we see it stands in between the sky and the earth itself. What does that mean? It tells me that the world as we see it is actually the heavens, but not the world as in the physical world, because we got two eyes for a reason. When we look at the physical world, we look at the world with one eye. We're all born with two eyes, and we're born with two ears. We start to hear and see things as children, as babies, but as we get to around about 5 years old, and this what people call the third eye, it starts to close over. And then you start to say, because everything that's shown to you from birth is like in your face. So it's teaching you the physical world. And we got to reconnect and disconnect ourselves to understand that we can open up this other eye. And you'll see it with little babies and children. They start looking at things on the wall and they're having conversations with things that aren't even there. Because our one eye says there's nothing there. There is other things there, but we don't see it because our eye is closed. And my uncle, I say, oh, you know, we have all these opportunities. We learn all these consequences as kids. They say, don't do this or else this happens. Don't do this or this happens. And I'll sit there and we'd have this old grandfather, and he would never, he'd go out the back and you see him pointing and talking to things, and you go, who's he talking to? He's a crazy old man. And as we got older, we found out he's like a traffic monitor for the spirits. Spirits would come to him and he'd have conversations with them and take them where they need to. He'd leave his physical body, his spirit would take them where they need to go to. This is mind-blowing that you're experiencing this, you know, because you hear about it. Then when you start to experience things yourself, it gives you a whole different respect and it gives you a whole different opportunity. So then we start talking about the spirit world. We start to see and we start to feel the spirit. And every living creature, not just people, have spirit. You know, we as people aren't any more superior than any animal or creature that lives on this land. Yeah, we go, ants. Look, I'm a bit like that with spiders, all right? I'll let a spider be unless you're in my house. And I'm going, yeah, now I'm getting you out of here, all right? You can do what you want outside. But no creature, we aren't more superior than any creature that walks upon this land. We all have a responsibility and we all have a purpose. We all have a purpose, and if we recognize and understand our purpose and our responsibility, then we understand that we're all equals. And when I was given my totem, which is the rock, I grew up in the 90s, so I'm like, WCW, expectations here now, like the rock, really? Under this, I'm chiseled like the rock. Just, absolutely, cheese grater abs. But it makes a lot of sense when you're an animal, when your totem is an animal, because the first thing they're able to tell you is you're not allowed to eat your totem and you got to care for your totem. Now that makes a lot of sense, but when it's a rock, I'm not going to eat rocks. You know? And in the 90s, if you was like me, grew up in the 90s, you can go to Kmart and buy pet rocks. It was actually like a thing. You had Tamagotchis and pet rocks. It actually happened to you. Yeah, you were one of those. When you couldn't afford a Tamagotchi, you got a pet rock. That was me. So I didn't understand the significance and what this actually meant. Now, rocks is about multiple layers of things. It's about passing of knowledge. You know, it's passing on responsibility to people in space. Yeah, it's one of our main trading tools. So it's about connecting one to the next. And I find myself doing exactly what the responsibility of a rock is in the work that I do now. As an educator, a bridge between the two worlds is exactly what the rock is all about. And it's funny that things happen like that. I remember two of my nephews, Cliffy and Aaron, they were about the same age, around about 10 years old. And at the same place, they both get given their totems. And Cliffy's like skinny little dark lad, and Aaron was a tubby little fair-skinned lad. So my cousin sister's son and my biological sister's son. And they start with Cliffy. Cliffy, your totem is Tunkel, the brown snake. And he knows all about the brown snake. Everybody knows, they don't know any other snake, but everybody knows brown snake. It's one of the most venomous snakes. So he looks at his cousin Aaron going, brown snake, yeah. Venomous, yeah. He gets to Aaron, they go, Aaron, your totem is Wartle, the wombat. And his face dropped. He goes, it's because I'm fat, hey. And because they started with Cliffy, skinny little dark lad, and then brown snake, and then he was tubby little lad, they wombat. So he thought literally, first thing that goes, it's because of what we look like, but it's not. We actually don't believe in semen to be the cause of having children. We create spirit babies. Yeah, you have every creature is alive and the spirits live within our lands. Whether you can see them or not, they're there. With the one eye, you'll be able to access it. The best way to explain it for little kids, it's like Pokemon Go. You play Pokemon Go? You don't play Pokemon Go? Anybody know French? If my grandparents were here, they would have been able to talk to you. I lost that talent. Who plays Pokemon Go? Somebody's got it. Good. No? All right. You do? Good. Because I do need a couple of trades. Just saying, yeah. Pokemon Go, it's a world hidden within a world, yeah? We'll sit there and look across the road and we go Pikachu's across the road and all the rest of you's going, there's nothing there, man. With your 2 eyes, you're looking and going, there's nothing. It's the bus stop. I don't know what you're looking at. They go, no, but look through my phone. You can see Pikachu and you see this little creature hidden within our world. The spirit worlds are a lot like this. And you can take a, you've got a spirit, Amber, you great spirit. She's a very out there kind of person, isn't she? Big spirit, you know. But, we ask people all the time, my uncles will sit there. When I ask about this, where's the heavens? Because where do these spirits go? And because, we all have this idea in Christianity, it's in the clouds. And I was like, yeah, but I've flown through the clouds and I've flown over clouds. Did I fly through the heavens and miss something? And what he's trying to say when this happens is the spirit within the land and within the people, we all have our own responsibility. All of us are born with a spirit. And the spirit world is like a big pond. There is no Aboriginal. There is no non-Aboriginal. There is no religions and cultures in the spirit world. We're all the same. We're all spirits and we all have the same responsibility. We're born into different creatures or different elements, whether it's a person, a plant, an animal. Our spirit is given a physical body. And if I take away my spirit, a lot of people go, my spirit goes to heavens, and there's no experience of this happening. And when you live in a culture that then have old people who see spirit living alongside of us, and we don't believe it because we only see the world with one eye, we got to take them more serious because they have access to things that we don't have. And when we talk about that opportunity for us to embrace that spirit, as people, if I take away my physical body and goes back to the land, and my spirit goes up to the clouds or whatever it goes into the spirit, wherever that is, for us, it goes back here. And we can smell, we have that certain smell when we smell our grandmother's perfume years later in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody around, so the perfume is not here, but the spirits are there. And we actually recognize that spirit because they're standing alongside us, actually guiding us. Who's had deja vu before? You know deja vu? Yeah. Fluent. Who can explain what deja vu is? We have. A feeling of presence. This happens some other time. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a definition of it. Can you explain why it happens?
Is it like a short-term memory loss thing?
Short-term memory loss. That you're remembering something that didn't happen yet.
Yeah, absolutely not remembering.
Yeah. I don't think it's memory loss if I remember something that didn't happen yet. You've been there before. Where have we been there before? How do we know that we've been there before? We feel it. Yeah. We're provided messages. So a lot of people say this is the best thing about seeking clarification with our elders, because they have access to that world. They tell you, they go, we're provided information in our dream, in our state of dream. We don't have to be asleep, but we can be in a total relaxation. People call it meditation now. You can be in a zone. We actually daydream. We're provided messages from the spirit world. When we're talking about talking with the spirit world, it's not like going like, the spirit sitting there going like, hey, Jack, mention me, okay. Like we're not having a physical conversation, but we start to have a telepathic conversation. They affect my mind and the way. So I think that I'm thinking it, but I'm provided messages from the spirit world. They affect our mindset. And that happens in the state of dream. When we have dreams, we're displayed pictures, we're displayed scenarios. Some are not they're not serious, like I dream about all kind of weird things. you know, like Ben zombies and, you know, vampires and all that kind of stuff. But you got to be able to decipher between it. When I got given my first daughter, she was the black swan. And I had this experience with my daughter. And I wasn't paying attention to my dreams. And all my uncle said to me, he goes, you're not paying attention to your dreams. And he knew that was pregnant before we knew that was pregnant. And I'm one of these weirdos that talks to the animals, all right? And who talks to animals? All right, dogs and cats don't count. Now, if you got a dog and cat and you talk to dogs and cats, doesn't count. Who talks to animals?
You're in the room.
Yeah?
Jack.
All right, cool. You talk to trees and stuff? Yeah, cool. Trees are good, but when you start talking to like a bird, people are like, oh, what a weirdo. So I do it in language, you know, and I'm walking through Cleveland National Park. I see this black swan. And I've had a couple of experiences. I see it at a distance. I'm like, hey, go, guy. So I say it in language because it seems more cultural. If somebody's like listening to me. And it was the only reason why I said it is because I said it in language, not to connect with this bird, but it was just like, if somebody hears me talking to this black swan, going like, hey, black swan, come over here. Like, they go, this dude's weird, you know? But wait, good, you're guy. Go, oh, that's very cultural, yeah. And as I'd said it, this black swan jumps in the water, looks at me, starts coming my way. So I start to, I'm now turned into like David Attenborough. Like I got my phone out and I'm going, he's coming out of the water. And I'm like, I'm acting out this whole scene. Recorder, he comes down into the path. He's like, woo, woo, starts talking to me, woo. My nephew comes walking past, he walks past, bird lets him go. My niece walks past, lets him go. Kid's mum tries to walk past and it just bars her up and it didn't let her pass. And it's like, oh, starts talking to her. Now I've gone from David Attenborough to like, I'm going to become a YouTube famous. And I'm like, just bite her. You know, like I'm bite her. It's gone to a whole nother level. And it happened for a couple of minutes. And then the bird just like took off in the water. And I've totally forgot I had this. And I caught up with my uncle one day. I said, yeah, instead of explaining it to him, I showed him the video. And he looked at it for 2 seconds. He goes, you're not paying attention to your dreams. He watched it, he didn't even watch the whole thing, but he goes, you're not paying attention to your dreams. He goes, you're getting provided messages from the spirit world. You're not paying attention. Because as a parent, I'm told the responsibility of my child. I'm given their totem. The messages are given to me. And if they don't, they tell me like the physical bird will tell me if I have to, or a creature, something will come to me and tell me what it is. And I did not pay attention to it. The second and the third, I was a little bit more aware of those as well, because I was like, yeah, I pay attention to my dreams all the time. Me and Kim Kardashian, it hasn't happened yet, but I know it's going to happen. You know, like, just play with him a little bit. But yeah, so the reason why I say that is because we have responsibilities to explain and see our connection to a specific thing. And when we talk about that spirit world, I take away the physical body. My spirit goes back in the land. And my parents or my children all have the same smell. So I connect to something that I know in the spirit world and help guide them, provide them messages and affect their mind and prepare them for things that's going to happen and things that have happened before. I told my mums, I got three mothers. I was sitting there telling my mothers when I got to about 11 years old, I said, can I just explain something to you really quickly? I said, I don't know if this happened before. And I said, we was all at a house. And I said to my mum, B, my mum's name's Nunu, and the other one's B. It's not their real names, it's their nicknames. I didn't realize my mum's real name was Annette until I was about 15. And I said to my mum's sister and then Mama B, I said, you was there, and we lived at this house. And there was like, you know, when you go to the beach and there's those big trees along Brighton Road now, you know, or Semaphore Road, whatever. Those across the road, and there's a little picket fence, a little brick fence at the front of this house. You put me down, and I walked to her partner at the time, Uncle Lewis, and he was like walking backwards. And I remember the whole thing happening, and I was sitting on the roof up here watching the whole thing. I could see through the walls, like I was seeing, you know, when a graphic designer builds like a floor plan, like I could see through the walls, and I'm watching myself as a 1-year-old kid walk for the very first time. Told them exactly how it happened. They go, yeah, how do you know that? I said, I dreamt it, and I dreamt myself up here. So my dream, it wasn't my mind. It wasn't my point of view, because me as a kid, I was here walking. I can't watch myself like you're watching yourself on TV. I was watching myself. And that's somebody else's memory of me. This is spirits watching me, who then provided me the messages. The dream and deja vu happens the same. You're provided messages because you need to take a message out of something that's happening. At that point in time, you need to take something from this. That's why we go, I've been here before. It's about what do I need to take in from here? So when we talk about the spiritual connection to space and place, it's my parents that are guided. But if I take down a tree has a spirit. And I cut down this tree and I chop it up and I create these nice little what are they called?
Floorboards?
Floorboards. Yeah, thank you. See? First language speaker. Helps having one. Translate. Create these nice little floorboards. Where does the spirit go from this tree? Because there is no tree heaven, is there? Like there's a person heaven. There's doggy heaven though. Yeah. I got my little dog 7 up there, you know, like, yeah. The spirit goes back into the spirit pond. Ready to be born again. Ready to give another life into something else. And that's our connection. You remember people go, yo, your old soul. This animal is different. This person is different. They're old souls. It's because we do eventually come into like a reincarnation as born into something else. And that's what the spirit is all about. So we're all connected. We're all exactly the same. What we have as Aboriginal people is that opportunity to be provided that information so we know what we're looking forward to. We know that we can have this opportunity to be connected to a specific place and it to make sense to us. We're always learning. We're never an expert. You ask if I want to be an expert educator. I'm not an expert educator, okay? I'm an educator, but we're never experts. There's always something to learn. You never stop learning. And even, you know, we can find ourselves in specific areas of expertise that we work towards, but there's always something to learn. And disconnecting and reconnecting to something else is probably the hardest thing, because we get comfortable in what we're doing, and especially when we get comfortable in working towards something which our society has created for us. It's hard to be the change. It's hard to go, I'm not going to do that because it's the norm at the time, and be the person to be something else. And my uncles keep me very grounded. And, you know, we find ourselves in the society, we live in a society of like sheep. You know, we follow the crowd and we do the norm. And my uncle, every time he rings us up, he doesn't even say hello. He just goes, bah. He goes, you city slickers. He goes, you the sheeps. Yeah. Green light says go, red light says stop. You got to stop at the road, and then you got to walk across when everybody says you're controlled, and you do exactly what the sheep do and the cattle do. I go, yeah, true. To get a disconnect and go in the country, there's no roads. You go paddocks, sweet, we're going straight through them. Bush, we'll find our own path. Because through that, we find ourselves in a different space. We start to see the world a little bit different. Not just taking it from face value. Road takes me here. Bush tracks or making your own tracks, different perspective of life. So when I'm talking about connecting to to the spirit world, we all have that responsibility, and we're all the same. Doesn't matter our religion, our culture, our values, we're all spiritual beings. It's about disconnecting. It's really hard in the society we live in, especially with social media and everything else, where it's so full on. Who here has a trade? What do you got to trade in? Ceramics. And? You said you had a trade? I seen your hand go like this. Yeah, you're going to make it up. Physio?
Trade. So I backed out. Yeah.
Oh, that's why it came down real quick. Yeah. I got a sore back later too. I'll get your number later.
You're in there.
Still working on this sore back. Yeah. Not many people need a trade anymore, do they? I can do ceramics. I'll watch a YouTube video. I don't need to study it. I don't need to do nothing else. I can watch a YouTube video and do anything now. Build a bookshelf, I'll do that for you. There'll be 9 screws left over, but still I'll do it for you. We got a quick fix in everything. We got a society of quick fix. Nobody wants to take a time and day to sit down and listen double. Because I can tell you something and you're going to hear it with one ear, but listening double means paying attention to the spirit world and what they're providing us too. That's the 2 ears. We only walk with 1 ear. We only walk with one eye. We're only learning with 1 hand. We're only walking with 1 foot. It's about disconnecting from the world that has created that for us and go back to country first. Aboriginal people talk about country all the time. We talk about significance and we talk about custodianship for country and what that means. Because country is what provides me life. This country will thrive without any people on it. Animals will be fine. As soon as we manipulate and start to modify the country, we're affecting a habitat and a migration of anything else. Yes, it benefits us as people, but I build this fence, I go, I want to keep out the snakes. Cool. But everything else that uses that path as migration, we leave out as well. We affect the migration of what's to happen. Tell you a story, it was down at St. Kilda, and it's now a bird sanctuary. And it only recently became a bird sanctuary because they wanted to go through development. They have development there, and they had all these guys going out and meeting, going, okay, we'll start planning this development. And this flock of birds came in. They go, where'd these birds come from? So they go and do their research and track these birds. And every 10 years, they fly around the world, and every 10 years, they come back to the bird sanctuary at St. Kilda. Now, if they went ahead with this development, and those birds flew off, came back 10 years later, there's houses. It's like a plane running into a place with no runway. It's modified, it's changed. It affects their life, their habitats, their birthing, sustainability, ripple effect of everything else, all for the sake of what benefits me. As people, we come and go. We're going to leave the country exactly how we left it and we was given it, not modify it to change us because it makes sense to me now. Yeah, so going back to the original and going back to what was is our main significance. We talk about country and sea first because that's what provides us everything we need. And us as Aboriginal people, we're custodians of a specific place. People go, a custodian is like a carer. It's not an owner. We don't own this. We have responsibilities, and families have responsibilities to certain areas. People, mobs have different responsibilities to certain areas, but there is no owner. And that I found as a difficult thing that we actually got taken advantage of, because you think about a palm, this is quite clearly my hand. Yeah, this hand, this is quite clearly my hand, your hand, Amber's hand. Put your hand up, Amber. So that makes more sense. So we got 2 different hands, okay? Now, palm is mine and that palm is hers. But as Aboriginal people, see, we go, if we put our hands together, we live in a society, it's like this. We know that this hand is mine, that hand is hers. I can jump from this finger to that finger and we'd be in a different hand. But if we go like this, Amber, and we lap it over, so now our fingers intertwine like this. Now this finger line here is actually neither nor. This is not Amber's or mine, this is ours. And Aboriginal lands and country is like this. That's yours, this is mine, but in here it's shared. We're custodians and we're both custodians to this area, but you're a custodian there and I'm a custodian. You sanitize that hand, I'll sanitize this hand, but our fingers, we'll sanitize our fingers. Because it's both of our responsibility. And as custodians, my responsibility first is to care for country. If I don't care for country, people can't live on it. So the next responsibility after country is care for my family. Care for not just my family, but kin. And kin doesn't just mean my extended family. These are partnerships and relationships with other mobs and other families. Part of what we call songlines, trading routes. We got to maintain these partnerships and relationships this whole time. And as we maintain kinship, it's about understanding our spirituality with land, the spirituality of people and of animals. So land, kin, and spirituality is sort of all intertwined, happening at the same time. It's all of our responsibility. As custodians, my responsibility to care. Now, we live in a different kind of society, and I'm sure everybody's been to a hotel room, yeah? Now you go to a hotel room. Who makes the bed? Hand up if you make the bed. Only one. Good. So the majority of us, the majority of us won't make the bed. For the reason is that we are provided when we walk into into those, that location, we're provided a service that says you don't have to make the bed. We're going to come and make the bed for you. They explain their rules and their values. You don't need to make the bed because we're going to change the sheets tomorrow and give you all fresh new ones. And you get some people go, yeah, don't worry about changing my sheets. It's good. But if you're going to do that, sweet, that's on you. They've created their values when they walk into a space. Now, who goes, for all of those that now have been to a hotel and never made your bed, when you go to a friend's house and you sleep at a friend's house, who makes the bed? A lot more people. Why? Because they're giving us the responsibility to look after us. They're giving us a space to stay, but we're not their slaves. Yeah. Where you make your own bed. You're a guest here. It's your responsibility to make your own bed. And you look after this place just like I do. I own the place. I'm the custodian for this place, but as a guest, it's still your responsibility. So we all have a responsibility, and there's this my little slogan's going to take off, and you can hashtag this later as well. We're like custodians, and you mob as guests are guestodians. Custodians and guestodians. What's our responsibility? All of our responsibility to care for country, to care for spirituality, and to care for our environment and kin, because we are kin. All of us are kin. You hear us, we always say, brother, sister, and we start calling non-Aboriginal people, brother boy, sister girl. And you go, is that a cool thing? I get some people who go like, yeah, this person was calling me sister girl, like, is that like cool? I'm like, yeah, they respect you as family. Sister girl means like, you're not my sister, but I respect you like a sister. Amber's my sister girl. We like, you say friends, but it's like sister girl. We right. We go way back. Boom. We even like sanitize together. You know? But we all had that responsibility to care for place, care for space, making sure that we leave it behind for everybody else that comes with us. We want people to start to join the journey, to reconnect, disconnect from what is told that we have to do, to move away from being sheep, to start to understand that we are on a journey. My culture is your culture. My elders told me a responsibility that we as people have to this land. The land was here, and then our people came. Man was created, man was given law, woman was created law. Our duty is to all maintain our country first. And we together, man's law and women's law are two different worlds, but they're like clocks. They intertwine at the same time, and they make the reality. You think about a semicircle and a semicircle. Man's world and women's world are both semicircles. Now that's not a very straight wheel, but if you turn it this way and man's world and women's world is respected at the same time, now that wheel is going to turn smoothly. Okay, they're not two separate entities standing side by side. They're actually working at the same. So our responsibility, care for country first, disconnect, but then stand alongside each other because we're all equals. My laws, my culture, my protocols, my processes, and everything that I'm entitled to and that I get the opportunity to learn, you have that same opportunity if you're willing to sit down and listen. Use 2 ears. Sit down, don't ask questions, sit down and talk. Just take in information. Silence. If you ask questions, it's okay to ask questions. You get silence, it means you're not ready yet or you're wrong. And it's okay to be wrong. We're navigating our world, our way through this Western society, and we're wrong all the time as Aboriginal people. We're learning things all the time. It's okay to be wrong. If you're sitting down with Aboriginal people, we love people to walk the walk. This is what NAIDOC Week is all about. It's about Aboriginal people standing here next to each other and celebrating our continual survival. And I don't like the word survival, but it is survival. We have survived because everything was taken and denied. But it's also that opportunity to be thrived as well. And we're learning. We're learning this world, but we're also opening up the doors for others to come in and sit alongside us. Make that journey, make that connection, get to know people. One of the worst statistics I came across not too long ago was 9% of the Australian population know an Aboriginal person outside of the workplace. That's including in the sporting arena. That means you don't know me. You don't know me as a friend. You don't know me. And if you don't know me as a friend, you're not going to ask me questions. You're not going to learn from me. I'll learn the things that I'm going to provide you in a workplace is that's good enough. We're close enough and good enough isn't good enough. We want to know you, and you ask a friend anything. You ask a friend to borrow sugar, but you ask your neighbor, if you know your neighbor, to borrow sugar. But if you don't know him, you go, I'll go without. Getting to know people, and every person you meet, don't put Aboriginal people in a bubble, because everybody you're going to meet is different. My responsibility is the rock. My daughter's the black swan. My next son is Nguku, he's the owl, and then I got the dragonfly. They're all different responsibilities. Every person you meet is going to meet, and every person that we meet here is going to have a different responsibility in life. I want to connect to know you for who you are. Tell me your cultural heritage. It's okay not to know your heritage, because it's what our society's created. We're going, no, I'm comfortable, I'm Australian. I go, well, what is Australian? What is your religion? You know, every other culture around the country, around the world, all has a religion or a language attached to it. But Australian doesn't. We're linguistically different in Australia. You tell me Australian doesn't tell me where you're from. Aboriginal doesn't tell you where I'm from. You can only find a Fritz sandwich here in Australia, in South Australia, all right? Don't ask for a Fritz sandwich in Victoria, because you won't get one. We're linguistically different, culturally different. Language and a place of belonging only comes down to country. There's specifics, languages are specific to country, and those protocols that come with it as well. You want to try and wrap me up now?
Yeah, I am.
Like a virgin. I just feel like, I just want her to do it, just once. Just do it once.
He's jealous that I got the Madonna.
Yeah.
He likes Madonna.
Yeah, Madonna might.
I'm going to come sit less awkwardly far away from you now. We were just told not to ask questions, but can they ask questions? Or is
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Does anyone have any questions or have anything that they'd like to know more, even about NAIDOC Week? I think you started touching on Hill Country as a theme, and you've probably said this a few times this week.
A couple of times.
Yeah.
Check it out on ABC. iView.
We've shared it on our page for anyone hasn't seen it. But the theme of Hill Country is relevant to some of these conversations that we're having around connecting to the living world and the spirit world, and sort of reestablishing some of those broken seeing and hearing and walking. Yeah.
But also just relationship building as well. That, you know, healing country, it can't be on me to heal country. If it's on me and we go, like, the majority here is destroying it in one way or the other, and you got me doing it, this is nothing. As a minority, it doesn't mean nothing if I'm the only one doing it. It's a numbers game, and it takes a whole lot of people, a movement of people to actually make change. Now, if we got half the room, it's going to take a little bit longer. You know, user caring for user destroying. It's going to take a little bit longer than just all yous versus me. The more we add, the more that we can take. So it's a movement that people need to make change. And Heal Country is about building relationships with people. Get to know me, get to know this person, sit down, have a yarn. You'll build your own relationships, and you'll have your own understandings, and you'll start your own journey of learning. That then starts to talk about my connection to space and place, and yours connection to space and place. That's about Healing Country. Healing Country is not just about the term healing the space that we're standing on, because how do we do that? It comes down to healing us as people, healing us and our spirit, because spirit is in our land and in each of us.
Totally. Ben has been keeping an eye on the live stream. Is there anything that's come through on the live stream that you've maybe you want to share with us?
One question that's just come through from Brent, who said, many Caucasian Australians do love the Aboriginal culture, and as Australians want to share it, but many Caucasian Australians feel awkward about truly embracing Aboriginal culture as ours. Is this okay? Can Caucasian Australians share Aboriginal culture as ours also?
Yeah, and yes. The hard thing is here as well is that it's still a touchy thing. We're 50 years into being allowed to speak our languages and our culture. Something that when we talk about like non-Aboriginal Australia, and the hurt and anger towards it's not towards individuals. So I do want to make this very clear. When people say it's white Australia that done this, we're actually talking about government. The government and the system that were created did this, not individuals. And because of that system was, Aboriginal people were seen as not even humans. We're actually technically not even humans until 50 years ago. Our languages and our culture was all pushed aside, and it was seen as not a civilization or a civil civilization, and recognized as savages. And now that people start to understand and learn more about Aboriginal culture, you start to look at the intricacies and the knowledge that Aboriginal people had was actually far greater than what was expected at that time, because there was a power imbalance. We're going, well, you don't do things like we do it, so we're going to push you down and take you away. You're going to become more like us. And I guess we want people to embrace it, but even in the Aboriginal society, if I teach my kids something, that does not give them the right to then go and explain it as their story. This is not your story. This is a story of your parents. And until you understand the story and I give you the approval to move on to the next part, then you can say it. But so it's about knowing your place. So that's what we're really, that's the biggest issue, is people will go, look, I spoke to an Aboriginal person, or my friend's cousin's sister was an Aboriginal man, and I now know this about Aboriginal people. You're not an expert. I'm not an expert. I'm continuously learning. I'll happily tell you what I'm allowed to teach you, but there's stages of life, and I'll tell you what you're entitled to learn. And Aboriginal people have that responsibility. So it's about knowing your place. At the same time, you go, yes, I connect to this space. I connect to this place, and I want to do this. I stand alongside and I walk the walk. I don't just talk the talk. But I'm not talking for Aboriginal people and going, I know what they go through. I know what they've been through. I know their culture, and I connect to it as well, because I have a little bit of a connection here. I'm the same. It's about knowing that space and that you're on a journey as well. People just like to talk. No talking, listen.
So Jack, just building on that quickly then, personally, I'm very passionate about language, and so something that I'm wanting to do more of is educate myself around Ghana language, and it's something that I've been trying to, in very small ways, introduce into this space. How appropriate is that, like beyond simple greeting and farewell and things like that? Providing I continue to educate myself from what you're saying,
yeah.
Is that what you mean? Is like, as long as I continue that education, then it's appropriate to start normalizing that type of language? Language here? Yeah,
we try and do it in everything else. Like we got playing cards now. So instead of playing like poker, like going, I got a full house, you go, yukabuto, I got a full house. Like, so you start using language with playing cards, because we want to just make it the norm. If your norm is this kind of environment, it's creating that norm. And I do a lot of classes of language in schools, and a lot of things with like teachers and preschool teachers. And I go, you're not here doing Ghana language time, because we don't want Ghana language time. We want to embed it into our society that it's the norm. Now, I go to jiu-jitsu, and my mate's like, oh yeah, that's a headlocker. I go, all right, let's name this stuff in language. If that's a norm to you, let's do that on a daily practice. And
do you want to give us a little lesson?
Give you a little lesson. Well, I started playing poker with a whole bunch of mates, and one of my mates gets 8-5, and he goes, oh, that's the race car. And I'm going, oh, race car? I said, well, I call that panapanati. And panapanati means the thing that constantly goes, because if you look outside, you go zoom, zoom, zoom. You see these cars, they just keep going. Like when my uncle would sit there and call them like sheep all the time, you see the things going all the time. And so that word, I'm like playing, I'll get this 8-5. It's like the worst hand in poker. If you play poker, it's like the worst thing ever. So I played it because I just named it. I'm like, yeah, cool, panapanati, it's the race car. And it ends up winning. He goes, as if you played that, that's like the worst hand ever. I go, well, I just named it and I called it panapanati, so I played it and it won. Cool. Anyway, a bit like, Kenny Rogers said, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, mate. Yeah, every hand's a winner. Every hand's a winner. Because I told this mate, so I told my non-Aboriginal mate, I said, yeah, call it panapanati. He goes, all right, panati. So he goes to a mate's house. He goes, plays poker. Eventually, a couple of months later, they come back and we have another boy night playing poker again, and he brings his mate, and his mate's in a hand against me, and he goes, he looks at our mutual mate, and he goes, I've got panati. And I've gone, I've got you beat. I just seen this through this whole circle, and he had no idea where it originated from. And it's because it's creating the norm. We create the norm with suburbs. Noarlunga, Carindilla, we don't even know the meaning of them anymore, but we just use them. So yeah, we want to just make it the norm. Don't sit there and go, oh yeah, look at us, we're doing this in the language here. My kids' kindergarten was the same. All these other kindies like, oh yeah, let's do acknowledgement of the country videos. They don't do any language throughout the year. And then my kids' kindy was like, should we be doing videos? Because every other kindy seems to be doing videos. Like, but you speak language on a daily practice. My kids are they get Animals Anonymous in. My son's like, they're like, oh my God, look at this cute little kangaroo. It's a male. And my son's just like, yeah, no, that's Nando. Yeah, and then she's like, what? And he goes, that's Nando. That's the boy one. So it's called Nanto. If that was a girl, it'd be called Wowie. And he starts giving her a lesson. And then he goes, yeah, me and my dad go hunting for them all the time. She's like, I better put you away. Licking his lips. Yeah, definitely create it the norm. Make it the norm that it's not even thinking time. Word substitution. Every time you say, what's a word that you would always use?
Well, this week, like half moon, picky.
Yeah, picky. Yeah. Yeah, so picky if it's moon. If it's full, do you do full moon as well? Yeah, it's a bit a little bit inappropriate. Yeah. PG, yeah. Took you a little bit to realise that one. Yeah, that one's a different word. Cacaramundo, that one's got a whole different name, Cacaramundo. Yeah. But it's different between picky is a moon, like when it's not full, but when it's full, it's called Cacaramundo. Yeah. Cacara and picky, that's a male. Yeah. Sun, the female, Tirndo, and Cacaramundo or picky, the moon, is a male. And the earth is female too. A male, sorry. The story that goes with that, the sun, she's kind of dangerous, just like women. And that's how they husband and wife. And she goes every night. She goes out, she does what she needs to do, and then she goes to bed at night. She goes to sleep in Tapparawad in the Milky Way. And he stays out and he looks after her through the day. They keep an eye on her, and at night he goes hunting. During the day he goes hunting, puts all the food, all the yams, and puts everything in them sleeping. So when he looks after his wife so she can go home, eat, and then rest for tomorrow. She's got a really special job to do. And he stays out. And at the end of the month, he grows and he grows and he grows. By the time he gets to Cacaramundo, till he gets to the big one, then he dies. And he dies every month. Gone for a couple of days, and then he comes back and he does his old job again. Builds the energy, builds, and then dies again. And she just comes out and goes to bed, goes up, does her job, and he keeps there. That tells you the responsibility of man is to provide for your wife, but also to protect your wife as well, at all costs. Oh well, fun facts. Any other questions? There's like 50 questions up there. Can we read them, or they're not even? Sorry, your mob aren't even involved up there. Like, if I'm pointing over here, that's because you're on the screen over there. Over there. Yeah, there you go, Suzanne. We can see you. You got somebody waving back. I hope you mob been laughing at my crappy jokes as well. Yeah, and Suzanne's son, how are you? Hey, Nina Marnie.
Nina Marnie. Ben, do you have anything else for us? Hello. Obviously.
Yeah, just tell me exactly who they are. I'm sending them. I'm going to send them all their $50 later.
What in the world?
Sorry, you won't get it. She's trying to talk through it a little bit. She's asking what the largest problem is that you see that needs to be kind of resolved. There's not a lot of context to that, but like, how do we add value ourselves to this kind of resolution that needs to occur, or this improvement that needs to occur?
Yeah, I think it's going back to that, like just getting to know each other, starting the journey to get to know me, get to know our culture, get to know the protocols, and you'll feel when it's right and when it isn't right for you to then go and share. And if you're in a starting process and in a journey, early in the journey, you'll just go, I'm not the best. Anybody play guitar? Yeah, you can play guitar. Yeah, but yeah, if you can't play guitar and like 1-2 strings, you're not going to walk in and go, I'm a guitar teacher. So you got to know that with culture as well. And when you just know your space and you just feel it. Like we actually need to take our feelings and what our mind is actually saying at the same time, because we're actually governed from the spirit world. Yeah, they'll go, yeah, you're okay to do it. You can touch you on the back. Good. Yeah, feel that. the spirit said, yes, it's okay for you to do that. Or if you go like, yeah, no, all right, maybe not.
Okay. Just wondering if you, well, you said you're a language teacher. Are you running classes?
Is Jack running classes?
Yeah, I run a lot of classes actually. No, I don't, not like, I used to teach 4 nights a week, but then when I had kids, it was too much. I was working 9 to 3 teaching, and then like I was doing classes 5 to 8 o'clock each night. So it got a bit full on. And Ghana's quite unique that we've got 800 schools in our country. I'm the only fluent speaker of the language. We've got enough people now that can know basic language, and that's because in the last 5 to 10 years, we've put a lot of stuff out onto social media and onto YouTube, and people can learn it in the comfort of their own home. Yeah, but when I started, I didn't have anybody else to practice to. So I'd had nobody else to hear. I didn't have there's no recordings, there's nobody to speak it to. I had to look in the mirror and go like, if I go Nina Marnie, because Nina Marnie means, hey, you're good, then I have to respond, Marnie, right? So like, I find myself being a character, like 2 different characters. Like, I'm glad that my name is Jack, but I was actually given the name Vincent because I'm like Nina Marnie. Yeah, I'm like Nana Nina Nari, and I'm like Nari Vincent. I'm like Nari Jack. So like Jack and Vincent start having these conversations with each other. But yeah, with the opportunity, that's where we actually have to get into that area now, which is the digitalization of language. So a lot of people, especially like Aboriginal people, found it really difficult because non-Aboriginal people find it easier to learn language and like to learn language in itself because they understand patterns, especially when you get like linguists coming to class and you're going, you know, like I was going, when I first started going, there was like, you know, retired teachers, there was modern, you know, like new teachers, and then there was linguists, and it was like a little kid from Salisbury, and I'd struggled to read and write, and I'm going, these people are learning it quicker than me, and it was embarrassing. So I'd go home and I'd spend more time than any of them, like just learning language and learning the rules and then practicing myself. So I ended up teaching myself. The linguist taught us all the rules, but I then taught myself language. And I had to do those little activities to just speak it because I had nobody else to practice to. Then I started with my dogs, and then I had kids, and kids were pretty much like dogs at one stage because they don't talk back, you know, until they get about 3. And when they turn 3, then they start talking back to you. So yeah, it's but I'm working on like a bigger online learning platform, which is all conversational based language as well. So it's based on a formulaic method, which is all a formula. I say Nina Marnie, you say Marnie I. I say Waranku Nina, you saying Adelaide Ananku. You know, so it's based on a conversation. You won't learn the language, but you can show off a bit and have that. You can just walk off and go, oh, fluent.
There's a question down here.
Jack, you mentioned that your wife or your partner is Vietnamese. How do you bring the 2 cultures in terms of the children? How does that on a daily basis? How does it look like?
So it's easy now because we are separated. So it was, but there was a stage it got really difficult because, you know, my kid's first cousin. So my kid's mum and her sister, because your mother's sister is also your mother's in my culture. So her sister is my kid's mother. And so her daughter is, they're siblings. They're both sisters because they both have 2 mothers caring for 2 kids. And because the kid's mum's sister is younger than the kid's mum, but this kid was older than my daughter, in language we call her yakana, which is older sister. And her mum would sit there and go, no, that's only your first cousin. So we start debating about kinship now. I go, no, that's your older sister because of responsibility. You have different responsibility. That's your mum, same mum. And her mum's like, no, it's only first cousin. And then the Vietnamese grandfather would come in and they go, no, that's your younger sister because this mum's older than this mum. Doesn't matter how old the kids are. This one's the kid of that one, and you see a little 3-year-old head just go, like, which system is it? So when she's at my house, that's her mother. But at my house, that's her mother. The other one's her mother. And at her mum's house, it's her auntie. It's easier when you got 2 different households, yeah.
So many, all at the same time.
My question is surrounding family. So in society, your society mainly, you take care of the youth elders, and that's reflected in other societies around the world as well. We sort of if I hold a mirror to my society or our the Anglo-Saxon society, it doesn't seem to permeate as much, and it looks like a significant failing on interactions as you get older. You know, lineage, the second cousins, you know, even immediate families seem to become distant to a degree. What is the perception of being from your situation where you feel so embraced and loved and just, you know, knowing, like having such a value of community, and then looking outside and seeing like what does the other side look like?
There's two sides to this. We actually have a lot of kids in care as well, and that's because of the society, what has changed and created for our people. So, but we do have a really big care factor within our families because it is designed a little bit different, and that's because, you know, the first way that we address each other is by kin term. You know, like you think those that are parents, your kid, you go, who am I? And they go, Dad. And, you know, and they go, what's my name? They go, Dad. And, you know, like your name is your responsibility. You go, who's this? This Grandma. And go, what's her name? Grandma. That's all they know her as. But all your friends or all your cousins and your aunties, you know, that might be auntie, and then your cousins are cousins, but you don't go, that's your cousin. You go, that's Stephanie. What's your last name, Stephanie? Your grandfather, my grandfather, brother, sister. Yeah, see how I brought that one back? Yeah, that was really clever. Oh, that was clever. But the whole point is, if I call you a name, that means nothing to me. But if I call you son, I know everybody can tell my responsibility to you because that's my son. And you call me dad, that's my responsibility. So a kin term tells me responsibility. That's why Aboriginal people go, hey brother, hey sister, hey auntie, hey cousin. That's why you call like all the elders, aunties and uncles, because they're your educators. They have a responsibility as educators because they're not biased. Your parents are biased. Yeah, my kids are amazing. You know, never do anything wrong. You know, like little kids go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, Nana, P, and it's just a sound. And then parents, you're like, yes, go my kid. Like, Facebook that. Yeah. Hashtag kids are great. But aunties and uncles go, what's after L? And they go, Nana, P. They go, no, L, M, and then N, and they break it down. So they're your educators. So everybody within kin has a responsibility. And if you're referring them to that way, then you maintain that relationship to each other. You know, if you go first cousin and then your first cousins have kids, you're what? It's your culture, your mum. I'm trying to ask you, mum, now. Your mum's sister's got kids, that's your first cousin, yeah? And then your first cousin has kids, that's your... All right, cool. But is it your second cousin?
No.
No, it's not your question yet. I'll come back to you. It's not your second cousin, all right? I want to make this really clear because this comes down to technicalities, all right? Because in this Western law, you can marry your second cousin. Yeah. Oh, you said that a little bit loud, yeah. Yeah, your mum didn't tell you that your grandfather, her grandfather, or brother and sister, yeah. So your mum's sister has a kid as your first cousin, and your first cousin has kids as your second cousin. You can marry that person in your culture. All right, that's not your first cousin. That's not your second cousin. It's your first cousin once removed. Okay, we inherit our kinship system from the English, and that's your first cousin once removed. But in Australia, we go, that's too difficult. Your first cousin has kids, that's your second cousin. Your second cousin has kids, that's your third cousin. Your second cousin actually goes through a different grandparent on the same line. You can marry that person because it's a different distance, different blood. Not this one, that's your same blood. In my kinship system, that's my kid. Same blood. Nah, you can't marry that person. You're gonna need to know your kinship properly. And your laws too, yeah, just to make sure. So when we look at it, we go, there is no uniform. There's no uniform. Nobody here has the same belief system when it comes to kin as well. We're not as tight because we don't share that responsibility. As an uncle, that's my responsibility as an educator, and as a parent, I'm a provider and a nurturer. And that's if it's not just my biological, my cousin brother's kids, they're my kids as well. Not just my biological kids. My oldest daughter's 27. It's physically impossible. I got 3 grandkids. I got a photo of my son at about 2.5 walking alongside his daughter, and she's 2.5. And people go, look at the cute little cousins. I go, yeah, no, that's his daughter. My 10-year-old's holding her, just going like, yeah. Or like you got other 10-year-old kids walking around with dolls, and she's like walking around with a 2-year-old kid going, this is my daughter. People go, no, it's not. You know, I grew up in the society. I used to just tell my niece and I used to go to school together, and we used to just tell people we're cousins just because we didn't want to have to justify. I was like, I don't want to tell you that, like, that's my niece. Makes me feel old, and we're like same age. But then people go, no, you look nothing alike or whatever. It's like, yeah, different system. Now you can ask your question.
Can someone still be living their spirit?
Yeah, you can astro travel. There's a system. You can leave your spirit, like you become lost, your spirit comes broken. It can be contained and pushed down, and it's not doing what it's supposed to do. We get spiritually sick, which then creates physical symptoms in our body. And you go to places like, you go to doctors and they go, yeah, nothing wrong with you. You go, because your spirit's sick. So we got traditional healers that heal spirit. And when my uncle, like, so when that old man I was telling you about was like trafficking of a spirit, he could leave his spirit and he could be elsewhere. Our family that was doing a dance. We got a dance from a group in Sydney, and I was teaching all my nephews in the backyard at my place. The next day I got a phone call, and I got it from my uncle. He lives in like up Sejuna, Yallada way. He goes, Jack, when you're doing that dance, yeah, that song that you got from that mob in Sydney, yeah, Balya, that's a good one, eh? And that dance, Balya, that's a good one. Song, yeah, Balya, good one. He goes, but when you jump like a kangaroo, you're not allowed to jump like a kangaroo in South. You're not allowed to jump in this kangaroo dance like in South Australia. I go, okay. I'm not going to ask why, because we're not allowed to ask why. Just don't jump. And we know this. Only me and my nephews are in the backyard. We're always being watched. They watch us. They come watch us all the time. We never get away with murder. Yeah. You think that you're always by yourself? I guess not. No, you're not. You think about, we believe in spirits. You know, spirits are always being guided, and the spirits then affect people, make us think, and they give us their views on what they're seeing. So the spirit world just there. Take that tree away, build a house, and the husband and wife sitting there going, oh, we're by ourselves. No, you're not. Spirit right there waiting there, watching you like a little perv, you know, just going, oh, mate, waiting to be born again, you know, like, because it's like, yeah, the spirit jumps in the mum in the same process that semen is the cause. It jumps in the mum, creates a fetus, that fetus comes out a child, that child then grows. The spirit that jumps in is that totem. So it's like skipping rope, you know, like why are you doing it? The spirit's like waiting. Like, we'll get there one day. Damn, too quick. Next time. Damn, Dad.
Jack, we had a question from home from Sophie saying, as primary producers, is it appropriate and correct to normalise labelling products as grown and produced on Ghana country?
Oh, this is what I was talking to you about. This is the Jalma group.
That's them now.
Wine, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a yarn. Because you've got to make sure it's appropriate as well, because there is some that's out there that isn't quite appropriate. And I had to stumble across this in a good mistake. It's a little bit of a plug, but at the same time, it's a bit of a disrespect as well. You got Pertaringa wines, for example. They may think it means belonging to the hills. It doesn't mean belonging to the hills at all. I'll fill you in on what it means, but not in a public place when there's cameras on us. Yeah, make sure you're just consulting. Yeah, make sure you get the right name, because Aboriginal people in the past have been really good at throwing people under the bus, because you go, you're an Aboriginal person, give us a name. They're like, yeah, Moomba. Yeah, Moomba means a body part that we don't like as well, where the sun don't shine. So, you know, like, and they go, yeah, that means fresh water. No, it doesn't. Okay? But you're an Aboriginal person, when you know Moomba means fresh water, they're like, yeah, it sure does. You know, so yeah, make sure you do the consultation and over consult as well.
I think, and they're talking about having recognition of the land that produce comes from.
Yeah, that's really good. Somebody was asking that about email signatures the other day as well. I was like, yeah, cool. Just tell it what it is. I live and breathe on Ghana country, and if you send an email to Melbourne or China or whatever, sweet. They're seeing it when you're calling it for what it is. That's okay. Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything? Oh yeah.
Thank you, Jack, for your talk tonight and sharing the knowledge and culture with us. I didn't know that rock could be a totem, and actually my first thought when you said that went to, I guess, sadly, the destruction of like the Duke's and Gorge rock shelters and the potential destruction of the caves of the Forsyth Gully here in Adelaide. You spoke a little bit about what the totem means to you, or how you think you're living through it, as opposed to, say, an animal or some sort of other creature that we would consider to be living. But does it apply, I guess, in that more literal sense? And should we be, maybe if we thought about rock in that kind of way, maybe some of this senseless destruction might not have occurred at all?
Yeah, even stagnant things that aren't, you think there is no spirit, but element also has spirit. I love like Marvel movies. Like, I'm a Marvel geek, because it talks about multiple realms and realities at the same time and things like that. And you talk about like Poseidon, who's like the water gods and all this kind of stuff. And it's just a reality that and people don't see it unless you see a physical to it. So when we talk about a water god, they go, hey, it's Poseidon, yes, sweet. There's a person. There's the god of lightning, is Zeus, yes, we get it, it's a person. But if we don't take it as a person and we just take it as a being, it's not quite real. Everything is real. Every element, every creature, no matter what it is a living being. It's weird that you guys, if it's a living creature, it has a spirit. Rocks are also living creatures, living beings, and have a responsibility as well. Hopefully that makes sense.
One last question. You've had your hand up a few times.
Yeah. Jack, I'm a preschool teacher. What's the best go-to list for them to use to teach language to 4-year-olds? Or do you have a list that you can email us?
I can do that, but never questions.
No.
Always statements.
Right.
Yeah, when we talk to kids, we never give them questions. Yeah, you never ask a kid, do you want to go to bed? No, you go on to bed, So statements and making it the norm and statements. You have preschools, you do a lot of things. Tika, sit down. Panagai, come here. Yeah. Warawana, go outside. Yeah, Trukwana, come inside. You got the everyday yarns that you're always using. It's just making a list of those and making them the norm. So you're not having lesson time. It's just embedded as the norm. Yeah, group time. All right, Tika, sit down. Everybody, kari, stand up.
And do you have any resources that people could look up?
Probably some stuff on YouTube. Yeah.
Jack has a very good YouTube channel.
Yeah, if not, tell us and we'll create one for you. So you can go, yes, there it is. Yeah, that's the one we want.
Well, I'm going to leave it there. Triton, our studio co-owner, is going to come and say a few words. But I think all of us would really like to thank Jack for coming in and spending time with us this evening.
Well, thank you so much tonight. Like I feel like it's probably not. This feels like the start of a conversation rather than like this will be a progressive thing. It's so nice to have so many people here. I guess I want to thank Jack obviously for bringing your knowledge here and opening our eyes to things that need to be open to. Really, thanks to Amber as well for making that connection and making that occur for us. And thanks to well, I want to put it out there. Amber and Tessa are running what's it called? Full Bloom Retreat? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Full Bloom. In Full Bloom, which is like a practice of connecting to nature. It's going to be out at Paper Shell Farm during kind of blossom season there. So opportunity later on this month. If you're kind of looking for like, well, how do I open up my senses and how do I start this process? From people that are, I guess, connected with our body, but sometimes maybe not quite sure how to make those connections into land or place. Then this might be a really nice kind of start point for that and kind of open it up in that way. Also, big thanks to Becca for putting together Intelligent Living and being part of that. I guess I want to put it out there that Intelligent Living, this happens every 2 months. We have I won't say expert, but an educator come and hang out with us. And then it's, the conversation continues. And what we want it to be is that it begins like this. And then throughout the 2 months of this theme is connecting to nature as a kind of broad theme. In 2 weeks' time, we'll have a movie here. It'll be the
octopus, my octopus teacher. You guys seen that one? I love a little like study on like just like sitting with nature and letting that kind of like learning from that, which I think really kind of sits nicely with what Jack was talking about. Following on from that, then Amber's going to be doing the book, Finding the Mother Tree, is it? Yeah, so there's a book club, Finding the Mother Tree, which is an opportunity to kind of read the book and learn, again, different perspectives is what we're after here, so that we can kind of find our way in. And then the final piece on every Intelligent Living series is a community get together, an open conversation, kind of see where that all lands. We try and have one key kind of action that we encourage you to practice, because everything's a practice. Everything we're doing is constantly a learning. So the key action that we'd like you to consider is that take your time to like take moments to connect to nature, whether it's on your walk into work and just sort of taking a moment with a tree, or whether it's like taking a few breaths, or whether it's deliberately like shoes off and, you know, feet in the sand or the dirt or these kind of things, just to practice opening up the senses in the way that we practice, you know, opening up the senses of the body in the physical space here when we're doing the asana. So as you do that, every time you come in, you're like, yeah, I did that. There's a bean in the jar, and I want you to kind of drop it in and kind of do a little count. And I reckon we could absolutely fill up the jar for this couple of months on this, because there's an opportunity every day to just like take a moment and see, you know, maybe see what's coming through. So yeah, thanks for being part of this. Thanks again, Jack, Amber, and we'll see you again soon.